God damn it. Salt and Sanctuary, as some of you may know, was the first game I did a review of to feature Doodle Me, and the first time Vera spoke on this channel. That video I did, it's special to me, not just because of this, but also because Salt and Sanctuary is a damn good game. It being a 2D take on the brutal Souls-like, which as you know I'm a fan of. Imagine how excited I was to see the sequel released last week.
Oh my god, it's out!
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Back in the Salt and Sanctuary review, I even went as far as to say I was looking forward to the release of Salt and Sacrifice more than I was looking forward to the release of Elden Ring, which was absolutely true. At least until I got Elden Ring in my hands and promptly ruined my sleep schedule for the next week. Curse you, new video game releases. I was delighted though to see the good people at Ska Studios releasing a sequel to their delightful little outing.
It's out! Oh my god!
Yes, I think everyone gets the point now. Where was I? Oh right. I was so chuffed to see this game appear in store.
Oh my god, it's out!
Who are you? The game dropped last week and I pretty much used the last of my monthly cash to buy it. I mean, the cash was supposed to go to food and power, but this seemed like a better purchase. I installed it that very night and I was right away immersing myself into its dark little world. Then, like an hour later, I stopped and went to bed, which isn't like me. I usually completely fuck over my sleep patterns when a new game comes along that I really want to play, for 'tis the way of a true gamer, but no, I was very able to just put this game down and then piss off to bed. It seems like something of an ill omen, really, but perhaps I was just tired and on some level being responsible, right? No, that doesn't really sound like me. Unlike your mum and the strippers poll, me and responsible just don't go together. Before we continue, it's time for another scheduled session of me reminding you to, if you enjoyed the video, like it, maybe leave a comment and subscribe for future videos. If you want to support the channel directly, there's a couple of ways you can do that. They're both easy as pie, if you're good at pie, that is. If not, they're as easy as whatever your personal equivalent to pie is. First of all, there's my Patreon page. If you pop over there and pledge £1 a month, you'll get a few little perks for your support, like 24 hours early access to videos, you'll get shout-outs at the end of videos, and you'll even get to suggest games for me to play, which is always nice. But if you'd like something back for your support, that's fair enough, you can pop over to my T-Bill shop. We have shirts, we have tote bags, we have a jigsaw puzzle. That's all we've got so far, unless I've added more since I wrote the script. But we do have more coming, I can promise you that much. You can find both links in the description. That's that sorted, thank God. That bit is always tedious. Anyway, let's venture forth. Salt and Sacrifice is a 2D Souls-like stroke platformer produced by Ska Studios, and it's the sequel to the acclaimed Salt and Sanctuary, likewise a 2D Souls-like platformer. You play as an Inquisitor, exiled from your home for a crime of your choosing, forced to become a spellmarked and hunt mages until you finally achieve redemption. Just like in the first game, within minutes of starting, you're thrust into a technically beatable boss fight. But let's face it, chances are you won't beat the boss because you are supposed to die here. With the very first character I started, I couldn't even get a single hit on the fucking thing. I did try with a second character as the Sage, and I could get a few hits in before it one-shot me, so you know. Before you do the boss fight, you build your character, you choose a starting class. My main character was just a fighter. I know it's unoriginal, that's just the sort of thing I go for. The classes largely seem unaffected, except there's no chef this time, so like, you know, worst game ever. Anyway, that boss fight that you're not supposed to win. You get yourself killed, and that's when the game proper then begins. A mysterious cleric revives you as a sort of callback to the first game and gives you a rundown on what being spellmarked actually means. It's all very technical, but basically it's just another instance of a game lowering your maximum HP for the cardinal sin of getting killed when the game wanted you to get killed. Demon's Souls is the first game I can remember that did that, and it was as shit an idea back then as it is today. In fact, it seems Salt and Sacrifice went kinda hard on emulating the worst aspects of the From Software games that serve as this series' inspiration. No longer do we explore a big interconnected world, instead we get a handful of self-contained maps accessible from a hub world. We can no longer level up at checkpoints, this is all done from the hub now, which means our adventure is in a constant state of stop and start. But worst of all, if you choose to leave one of these maps because you have like 30 tons worth of salt that you don't want to lose, then just keep in mind that even though you can teleport back to the hub from any checkpoint, you can't teleport to any checkpoint from the hub. First, if you want to get to any of these maps, you have to use the Mirror Gate, which is already a bit of a hike away from the spawn point in the hub map, and it's even further if you've got all the way to the top to use the level up statue. You discover that when you teleport to a map, you always spawn in the same area. You can't choose a checkpoint to go to, you've got to start right at the beginning again, because fuck you, player. So if you do wish to disengage from a level, just keep in mind that you'll be traversing the whole bloody thing again just to get back to where you were. At least there are plenty of checkpoints and shortcuts, but it's still a bit tedious. In my mind, none of this adds to the experience. If anything, these additions just diminish demolish the experience. The last game practically nailed its world design and checkpoints. This is not an evolution of the formula, it certainly doesn't feel like one anyway. And that health mechanic isn't fun to deal with. Again, this is a mechanic that specifically punishes you for dying when one would think that dying should be punishment enough. Like any Souls-like, when you die you lose any experience points you're carrying. In this case it's your salt and you need to recover it from your point of death. One good thing I will say though, the salt just drops where you died. It doesn't manifest as some otherworldly beast that you have to slay to get your salt back. Or the boss you're fighting doesn't just nick it. And some of the enemies have been toned down a bit, like the bats no longer poison you for example. And I haven't seen hide nor hair of those annoying slime monsters. Though I can count on one hand the amount of positive improvements the game has seen. My freight train of complaints on the other hand is a mile long and can barely stay on the tracks. Though I think the worst part about the hub, I swear I'll move on to something else in a minute, I just want to get this last bit about the hub out, is that it completely eliminates the strategic element of the sanctuaries from the first game. See, in the old sanctuaries you used to be able to put down these icons and they'd summon NPC vendors, so you had to choose carefully what you wanted in each sanctuary because these items were finite. You really had to be considering where and when were the best times to place them. You could only teleport away from the shrines for example if you had the right vendor, but it all added a nice element of strategy to things. However, a hub map where all the vendors are just sort of there, it's not bad game design, not at all, it's just really uninspired.
Okay, we get it. You dislike the hub map. Can you please moan about something else? You make it sound like you never left the place.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about the gameplay. I have a question regarding it actually, Salt and Sacrifice. Are you taking the piss?
What? Nah, man. Why do you ask?
Oh, I don't know, maybe it's the fact that my axe and shield count as a single piece of equipment so I cannot mix and match my gear to find the perfect combo that works for me. Or maybe it's just how you managed to fuck up even the tried and tested formula of having healing potions restore at checkpoints. I mean, they will still do that, but dear viewer, you better be picking up plenty of flowers because if you don't have the right resources then your flask won't refill. I did not realise this until about the 5th time a boss had killed me and I respawned without the flask being refilled. I scratched my head, I rested at the checkpoint to see if that would kick it into gear and refill my flask, but nope, still empty. So I had to stop going at the boss for a minute and start picking fucking flowers. Salt and Sacrifice, I'd much rather be having another go at the deer man with the little axe and the bow rather than gathering fucking crafting resources. Why is this even in here? Why is this a thing?
Come on, man. Crafting is like the best thing ever. Elderman has crafting.
Yes, and it adds nothing to that game either. I can seldom think of a single example where the crafting system really added to a game that I played. I mean, I can see why it exists in, say, a survival game, but outside of those I really can't fathom why developers keep bothering. Maybe it's part of their artistic vision, but oh man, is that depressing.
I could tell you're stressed. Here, why not have some good old hack and slash fun? That'll perk you right up.
Good idea, the combat after all was one of the first game's best aspects. While it had some issues with hitboxes, it was brutal, visceral and satisfying to a degree that I should probably keep to myself. Salt and Sacrifice's combat is none of those things. It doesn't feel quite as brutal, it's not quite as visceral, and it's about as satisfying as drinking cheap watery knockoff cola. And I would know, I spent the week drinking bloody co-op cola. That stuff is horrible. Why can supermarkets never do a good cola? I noticed that enemies didn't get decapitated like they used to either, and all the weapons lacked any sort of enjoyable crunch. At least the hitboxes for the most part are better than they were the first time around. And there are still some interesting enemy designs that are fun to look at. Shame there are still plenty of cheap enemies who will combo you to death or just send you flying so the full damage does you in. Also, the bosses felt a bit worse this time around. They were a lot more aggressive, so it was really hard to get any sort of reliable hit on them. The mages were the worst for this, however. They'd spam spells constantly and they'd quickly fill up the screen with so much bollocks that you could barely tell what you were doing. Maybe this was all just a ploy so the game had a reason to introduce multiplayer.
Yeah, man. You have some buddies and engage in some jolly co-op like nature intended.
There is something very familiar and punchable about you.
This time around you can summon other players to assist you or be summoned to someone else's world to assist them or even invade them if you so wish. If you do wish to summon though, you've got to be human, so you've got to eat a guiltless shard that restores your maximum HP and connects you to other worlds, and oh boy, that's why you did it. That's why you have the health loss / undead system, isn't it, game?
Hey, we need to balance it out, don't we?
Or did you just do that because Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 did it this way and you're way less original than I'd previously assumed?
I'd prefer not to answer that.
I mean, they've got a point though. You look like you just grabbed random traits from later Souls games and threw them in some cynical attempt to claim you've evolved your formula.
Yeah, let's face it, all the sequel needed to do was get rid of the frankly stupid wounding and exhaustion mechanics and it would have been amazing. Though it's not like an effort wasn't made to stay in the same sort of mindset as the first game. As you explore and beat bosses, you encounter tools that allow you to traverse more easily. The shortcuts here are really valuable, like they were the first time around. Most bosses have a checkpoint only a short walk away from them, and there are plenty of places in each map to explore. But that desire to be different the way it did just kind of hurt the game in my opinion. And some of the other stuff they've added just really isn't fun. Most of the gameplay is just following mages around a map until they finally stop just summoning minions and decide to fight you themselves. They all looked rather unique and interesting, at least at first. That was until I discovered exactly how quickly the game would recycle them as mini-bosses. Yay, I fucking love that. And whilst you can die mid-hunt and continue from where you left off without having to start the whole thing again, the hunt will be completely reset if you leave the map. So if you're carrying a lot of salt and just want to go back and level up, oh well, you got to start all over again. Haha, sucks to be you, player. Although, to the game's credit, if you really want to call the hunt off, you can, and you can just go grab your salt from wherever you died and piss off anyway, so I guess that's good. We've still got money in this game, but it's more useless this time around than it was before. In the first game, it was useful to have a little bit of gold here and there in the early stages just to buy some low-level healing items, but they quickly became too pointless to bother with. And so eventually your gold was just to give to the cleric that would revive you for saving your life. This time around, I cannot think of a single time I actually needed to buy anything. I only did because I felt guilty for not buying anything every time I went to the shop just to see what they had, and I do that in real life sometimes as well. I guess it just exists to be taken by the obelisks that revive you when you die, and why the fuck do the obelisks take your money from you when you die? What do they need the money for? Do they have to pay rent on the same space they stand in forever? There's a lot less variety to your loadout this time around, what with shields only coming as part of a pairing with a weapon, though I will say, thank fuck for the inclusion of a magic meter so that I can cast magic without completely ruining the stamina. And I guess I do like the fact that we can co-op properly now, even if both times I tried to be summoned as a cooperator, the game bugged out in such a way that I couldn't even leave the map without closing the game. I don't know what happened, the enemies didn't seem to register me, I couldn't kill them, the host was nowhere to be seen. It was so weird. I'll be honest with you, I don't really care for this game. It tops out at being just alright, and that's a far cry from the first game, which effectively was able to hook me each time I played it. Usually I only stopped playing Salt and Sanctuary because I couldn't figure out where I was supposed to be going. I got lost in the massive sprawling world and just sort of forgot to come back to it. However, I stopped playing Salt and Sacrifice because I was bored and not having fun. Salt and Sacrifice is just a worse game in my mind. It fails to live up to the high standards the original game had set, and whilst it does have some nice additions to the formula, most of what it has brought adds nothing to the experience at best and actively hinders it at worst. After a while, I wasn't even really trying when I was mage hunting, I was just half-heartedly tracking them and did little to put up any sort of fight when I found them. All that's really got to happen is you got to do a bit of damage to the mage and they'll move to their next predetermined position. I could then just let myself get killed by their minions, but it wouldn't end the hunt, of course, it kept going. So even death wasn't feeling like a punishment after a while, sometimes it was just easier than having to deal with the minions, because they wouldn't be there when I got back, and I could just pick up my salt and wander on. It was way too easy to lose interest. After 10 hours, I was only on the second map, not because it was brimming with lovely content, but because the mage hunts are so fucking tedious, it's so much back and forth. I wanted to play until I saw maybe a third area. Instead, I tapped out after killing what I think was my 8th or 9th mage. I can't really remember because I was so bored of it all. Like I said, I'd looked forward to this game. Jesus fuck! Seriously, you're either taking too many or not enough drugs. But the more I played, the more I'm reminded of why I don't look forward to anything the games industry puts out, really, as it is an industry far more likely to disappoint than anything else. At least it is to me, and even when I had actual expectations back in the day, they were always kept so low that I had to dig for them for a week to even glimpse them. To me, Salt and Sacrifice is another case of a game sequel failing to deliver on the promise of the original game. One that tried so hard to evolve that it didn't stop to ask itself why it was choosing the new things it chose. I will just say that I don't hate the game, though I will also say my bottom 5 games of 2022 list seems to be growing much faster than my top 5.
Oh, come on. I ain't that bad, am I?
Well, you're far from the number 1 spot on that list if it makes you feel better, and there's quite a lot of contest for this list, so hey, chances are good you won't even see a dishonourable mention at the end of it all.
Yet you can hold your head up high knowing that in all likelihood you'll completely fade into obscurity on this channel. But don't feel too bad, most of these games do.
So at the end, all I can really say is I feel legitimate disappointment at Salt and Sacrifice. I can only hope the future efforts by the studio are better than this, though now my expectations are back where they belong, falling past the event horizon of the nearest black hole. I will say though, the new Saints Row game looks kinda funky, but you better believe I've tempered my expectations of it now, viewer. Oh, how I've tempered them.
Hey, come on. I'm still a game made with love and care, something a smaller creator made with vision and talent that so many of them seem to lack. That must count for something, right?
Would have helped if you were any good though.
Hush.
I was delighted though, it was good to see the people of the
Hey, we need to balancing out, that.
Anyway, the game dropped last week, and I used pretty much the last of my money to casually buy fudge cakes.
There is something fun.
Responsible amigo together like your mum and the streamers. But the more I played, the more I'm reminded of why looking forward to anything in the games industry just puts amongst fuck.
There is something very familiar. Familiar, apparently. It's familiar.